Welcome back, listening audience, to another special edition of the WTTA podcast. And today I'm joined by Kevin Berry, my co-host, my producer, my brain at this point in my life. Kevin, how are you?
Doing good.
Good. You're keeping me together, man. It's like Humpty Dumpty, but it's going to be all right. And today we're joined by a very special guest, Katie Gardner from Michigan, who I would describe as a Super 2A advocate. And what I mean by that is that there are these people that are in the 2A community that are all about the 2A community and do their best to represent the 2A community in the best light. And I'm talking about, these are not people that just talk about the 2A online. They're out there. They're throwing the events. They're showing up to the rallies. They're meeting with government. They're doing everything they can. The media, right? They're running towards the media to talk to the media. I call them like Super 2A advocates. Katie, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Michael, for having me today. Good to talk about everything that we've been doing.
Yeah, and it was great to finally meet you. I actually met you at in person at Goals, which is GOA's conference out, right? It was the first time we met in person. I obviously talked electronically, but it was nice to meet you. You said before we start, I was talking about this before you came on the show. You said one of the coolest things, and I just want to thank you for that. And we can kind of get in your why and how you found WTTA, but I just want to read it. And what I loved about it so much is that I'd never heard anybody put it this way. And you said, as someone who deeply respects the firearms industry, I struggle to make sense of our loss. You're a suicide loss survivor. You had a friend who passed away, and sorry for that. Without feeling like I was compromising my Second Amendment rights until I discovered WTTA. Through their compassionate and informative work, I learned that it's possible to have conversations about mental health while still upholding the integrity of our Second Amendment rights. When you wrote that, I was like, that's really awesome. First of all, any fan of Walk Talk America, I'm all for it. Right? This is my baby. But
yeah,
I had never heard anybody put it that way, and I really respect that.
Yeah, it really stumbling, like you said, I had that huge loss in our life, and it came at such a time where I had just been onboarded to Gun Owners of America, one of the strongest no compromise organizations for our Second Amendment. And so really, like I was saying, to find something that doesn't compromise the integrity of that was so important to me. And it was just such a blessing to come across Walk the Talk America, for sure.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And it's something too now that I kind of echo what you said when I'm talking to people, because I never really thought about it that way. It's like, yeah, Kevin, we do give people the ability to talk about this stuff and not compromise on their Second Amendment rights. So I want to give you your flowers for that. I really, really appreciate the way you said that. And it's just awesome. Yeah. So first off, let's get a little bit about your background. How did you get into this, right? Like, because a lot of people, I think, are always curious, like, how does somebody, I don't want to say like our obsession is the Second Amendment rights and firearms, right? But it is sort of our obsession. It's beyond a hobby at this point. So how did you get into this?
Yeah, so I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and being here in the city, we did not talk about firearms at all. It was something that was actually had a negative association to it. A lot of times you only heard about firearms if there was gang violence, or if somebody, or I guess if somebody was going hunting. Those were the two extremes. You're either a hunter or you're in a gang. Otherwise, you're not talking about firearms. So for a long time, even the sight of a firearm gave me a lot of anxiety, and it really bothered me. But when I met my husband, he was a 14-year Army veteran. He had just finished off his active duty and was crossing over to his weekend. He was doing like the weekend reserves. So when he did that, I met him, and knowing him and his whole background, it was a time for me. I had to step back and say, like, okay, if I like this guy, I'm going to really have to step into his world and understand firearms and see what that would look like for us when we have our children, if that is something I would want in the home as well, firearms. So I once we got married, I was very open, ready to do some educating on the Second Amendment and firearms related stuff. I was still a little bit weary of it. And it really took me during COVID, we had a lot of extra time. So during that space, I was able to really deep dive into the education portion of it. And it took me 3 or 4 years to get really comfortable with it. So the past 3.5 years, I've been learning as much as I can and actually being involved in the community as well. So it was important to me to be a part of different communities. That's why I reached out to Gun Owners of America and I became a part of the Empower 2A program, where we help teach other ladies and educate them on the Second Amendment. And having that community has really helped me out. And in turn, I've also been able to help other ladies cross over in my community, especially a lot of ladies that are just first time users, just coming into the range and learning about firearms, and also talking about the reasons why it's scary to them, what has happened to them. A lot of people have been through so many traumatic experiences or heard stories. So we really are trying to create that space for ladies to learn more as well.
So how did you find an organization like GOA? Because it sounds like your journey it's not that old, right?
Right.
And you were able to kind of deep dive into it, and then you found an organization like GOA, and you're like, how can I help? And kind of what is it? So it's two parts. Like, how did you find it, and then what is the job description in terms of like the responsibility description? I'd say for anybody else that might be listening to be like, hey, I'm in Kentucky and I might want to get involved in something like this.
Yeah. So I guess I would say behind the scenes, I was working for myself. I was working on educating myself in the 2A community. And then meanwhile, my husband is running for state senate here in our county and district. And so we were also very politically engaged. This is the first time as a couple, my husband and I decided well, we were tired of being locked up and sitting at home and not being able to control anything. So we both got involved very quickly into politics and realizing how important and serious it is. So he was running for office. And through that, we had a lot of great connections and met a lot of people. And one of them was a friend that was working for Gun Owners of America. So I came across her and I said, hey, I would love to be involved with Gun Owners of America. I'm personally working on something myself. I'm going through my own journey. How could I be a part of that? And that's how she connected me to Antonia, the director of Empower 2A. So that's how I got started in it. It was like more of a political drive to help protect and preserve our Second Amendment, and also share with other ladies at the same time.
I have a question about the political side of things. It's so easy for us to talk to our echo chambers, right? Like especially, and let's face it, most pro-gun people are center right, and if you're running in those circles, you're speaking to people that speak your language, or obviously are going to take your meetings. How has your reaction or interactions been with maybe the crowd that's center left, or do you ever get the opportunity to talk to them? Do they sit down with you? What's that like?
Well, so I do have one event every year. We've been doing it the past 2 years, is in Detroit, and it's a free event put on by Rick Ector. And it's a women's only event where the ladies get to come and shoot for free. Oftentimes it's their very first time shooting in the heart of Detroit. So with that experience, they usually train about between 1,000 and 2,000 ladies. And because of where they're from, of course, a lot of times they are very left leaning. And it is interesting to have that interaction with them. They're coming to the range, they're kind of stepping into our world for a minute. But it's hard politically for them to maybe grasp like how this transfers over to how your vote matters for you. But in the same turn, we're hugging these ladies and they're sharing their experiences and everything that's going on with them. And they really there's a huge disconnect there. They don't realize that this string is connected to your vote. Like the experiences that you're having out on the streets is directly affecting like how you're voting, or how you voted in the past and things like that. So it's we've opened up that space and we've gone into those places and we've had really great experience and been able to hug ladies, and actually a lot of them we able to then invite to our event, which is a little bit more politically engaging for our attendees. Rather, that one's just shooting, and they're like, "Hey, did you like what you experienced here today?" And if they say yes, like, "You probably would really enjoy this as well. Let me invite you to our event, which is more politically." So it's just baby steps, I would say, and mostly had good interactions, good experiences. A couple ladies are just it's hard to reach everybody, but that's okay.
Yeah, and I want to dive into the event, but before I do that, I want to say one more thing on the political topic. I I struggle with our people, the gun people, the 2A community sometimes when they just try to like sum it all up by saying, you have to change your political vote completely because of this one topic, right? I grew up in super liberal places. Um,
Hmm.
I I myself have never been political. I'm a libertarian. I put it out there. I think there's goofies on both sides.
For
But
sure.
what I struggle with is when people try to act like, well, we just got to keep telling them to change their vote. And I think it's more for me, and I just want your opinion on this because there's no right or wrong answer. But for me, it's more important to make them understand that they got to start having the meetings with their own people to explain that the Second Amendment should be something separate from their political agenda, right? And
Right.
why it's been a failure for the things that they believe. Because I'll give you an example, and I'm going to use my mother as an example, right?
Hmm.
Who's as liberal to the bone as they come. She's a feminist. Her hill to die on is the abortion issue, and I'm
Okay.
never going to tell a woman what to do. Like that's just
Hmm.
first. I've learned my lessons in life. Like I just believe, like this is my belief. If men could get pregnant, we'd be getting abortions at 7-Eleven. But that's just my belief,
Yeah.
right? But
Sure.
when I
Yeah.
look at the
Exactly.
struggle that what some women have with this, and I'm like, that's their hill to die on. My mother is pro 2A as they come. She is.
Hmm.
That's the one thing where she checks that box over there. But she's not going to come off her hill. That's her hill. Uh,
Okay.
I have a better opportunity or chance to convince her to keep talking about why the Second Amendment is so important to the rest of her people than I ever do flipping her to another side. Do you think
Hmm.
that we need to put the emphasis there, or do you feel like you get through to some people sometimes, or maybe you're catching the people that are just like in the middle and they're like, I don't know. Like, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Well, could you rephrase that just a little bit so I can be specific to your question?
Yeah, is it more important to make people understand Second Amendment rights, or do you feel
Hmm.
like there is an opportunity to bring them over to your political side through the Second Amendment rights? You see what I'm saying? Like to me, I think it's more important to make people understand why the second is so important. I
Hmm.
don't think you're going to flip somebody who's over on one side to change their whole political opinion just because
Yeah.
of the Second Amendment. Second Amendment doesn't mean the
Exactly.
same to everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't. Sometimes, um, it like you're saying, there is a wide variety of reasons why the Second Amendment might be important to you, and I do agree that it should be, and should be a nonpartisan issue. It is something that unfortunately has been ran with by the both political parties, even all of them, and using our heartstrings to connect it, like pulling us which one way or another. And I do agree that it shouldn't be like that, and I think it's something that we really try to focus on when we do bring it up to ladies and have these tough conversations with them. And like you're saying, talk about why it's important to them, and be a little bit more specific on when we do have to bring in political, like who would you vote for then? Like you're saying, okay, your self defense matters to you. And then how do we then bring that over to who are you going to vote for that would help you, preserve your Second Amendment rights? At some point, it does come into the conversation. and we're not going to change their views on everything. Like you're saying, abortion is a completely different issue. It's something like, and that's not our goal. It's not to change them. Everybody has the right to have multiple opinions on different things. It is really unfortunate that it is so pulled on both sides in the middle. I think it's important to help remove that and just say it's your God-given right for absolutely everybody. It's not for the right, it's not for the left, it's not for just libertarians. You know what I mean? So I agree with your stance on that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. Especially when this administration took power. You know, my biggest thing looking at the gun community was like, okay, now we gotta sit down and meet with liberal gun club. Now we got to sit down and meet with liberal gun owners, because
Yeah.
these groups are the most important people right now, because these are the groups that are going to get the meetings with these politicians that are in power, that have these anti-gun stance. Like, and we don't really do that. We don't push them to the forefront in these
Hmm.
situations. We keep acting like, oh, it's like jumbo shrimp. It's two words that don't go together. You can't be a liberal gun owner, and I think we're missing the boat there. But that's
Huge.
not our problem to solve. But anyways, I appreciate your honesty about that answer. I always like
Yeah.
to pick the brain of people that that are in it. Like I said, and I believe you're one of those people that's really deep in it, and you're having the meetings, and you'll talk to anybody, and I appreciate that. I want to talk about this event, and kind of went down there. You had the last one, September 14th, and I think
Yeah.
this is the second year in a row that we've sent you like a care package that had just all the WTTA swag. So I can't thank you enough for promoting our message and kind of putting us out there to make people understand that these things exist, which ties
Hmm.
directly to what you said on Instagram. It was so beautiful, right? Like making people understand that it's okay to talk about these things, even if you're a staunch Second Amendment supporter, or maybe this is
Yeah.
the type of thing that will make you support the Second if you see that these efforts are happening, that there's being some sort of action, right? But
Yeah.
tell us about the event.
Yeah, so our event was September 14th. It was our second annual Women's Only Range Day just outside of Flint, Michigan. It was in Davison at the Williams Gun Sight Company. It was absolutely amazing. We had great attendance with over 118 ladies attending, and we had a full packed day of them doing a rotation of different things like AR-15, handgun, shotgun, and we did a confrontational politics and workshop where we really break down what that means to be involved politically and why that might be important to them and how important their 2A vote is. Like, we thought that was super important to share with them. So these ladies had a great time. A lot of them come in at the very beginner level, and just curious to learn more and just how to get activated. So that was what our day kind of entailed. And we really had just the best time. A lot of great feedback already from it. So it was good.
Yeah, that's really cool. And going back to what we were talking about with the political aspect, when you have that workshop, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't, even if you're voting for somebody who's anti-gun, there's always laws put on these. There's bills out there that everyone gets to vote on that has nothing to do with picking like one person for a position of power, right? And in these type of
Yeah.
workshops, I'm sure you could say like I'll give you an example. I had a buddy of mine come to me one time, and he asked me a question. He said, there's a question on the ballot that it was about transfer laws,
Hmm.
and he's like, I should vote that you can't just give your firearm to somebody, right? And I know
Mm.
what he was
Okay.
thinking in his head. He was thinking the worst case scenario. He was
Yeah.
thinking about a transfer law as Mike got in a fight with a guy down the street and he asked to borrow my gun. you know,
Hmm.
I shouldn't be able to just give Mike my gun.
Yeah.
And I said to him, well, what about in a situation where you come over to my house and I'm not doing so well? If you vote for that bill to pass, I can't hand you my firearm to get it out of the house and you leave with it without us breaking the law. And he was like, oh, I never even thought
Right.
about that. Right. And I think
Hmm.
like there's where we can make some real wins, especially with people that politically disagree with us, where you make them understand, you think that they're common sense laws, and they're not. They create barriers to entry for people to do things, right? Like that's where
Yeah.
I think the win is. So I love that you have like a little workshop there, because I'm sure you can define and give people the blind spots, because a lot of people that go into reading a bill or reading a law and just saying, okay, like I'm going to look at this through the worst case scenario lens, and this really
Hmm.
makes sense in that worst case scenario lens, but it doesn't make sense with some common sense stuff, like being able to hand your gun in a time of crisis to somebody and let them leave with it, so you don't actually do something horrific to yourself, or red flag laws preventing people from going and getting mental health help because they're afraid to lose their gun rights, right? Like people
Right.
only put those things in the. So that's really cool. You got to share some stories. Like I'm sure you have a ton of stories. Communicating with these women that come through this. Uh, Everything from probably sharing suicide loss stories or mental health
Yes.
stories.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's that like?
Yeah, those stories are actually so powerful. And you realize, I realize I don't work for Gun Owners of America and Power 2A. I actually work for these ladies. It is so important that I'm able to hold the space for them and then be the voice for them when I go into Lansing and talk to their representatives. So a lot of their stories are just so, they're very personal, and every single lady has a different reason why they showed up. And a lot of times they'll say, like, "Hey, how did you hear about us? Like, why did you show up? Why was it important for you today?" And it's everywhere from, they are single mothers and just trying to protect their babies. So it's important for them to become educated, and they're tired of, feeling the emotional pull and feeling like they're being manipulated on why they shouldn't have a firearm. So there's that. And then there's other ladies who have been through their own traumatic experiences, and now they're taking back their power, and that's really important to them. And then other ladies are very, very concerned politically about what will happen if firearms are removed completely from society and are not something that they have access to. So there's so many great stories, and they're really special, and all of them are so different and unique. So it's a really cool opportunity to be able to open that up for them and let them share those with us, for sure.
Yeah, and obviously the females in the shooting sports is something that has just gone like this over the
Oh
years.
yeah.
I remember, yeah, I remember in the 90s when I first got into the industry, it's just like women were there to stand behind their husbands while the husband was at the SHOT Show booth or the NRA
Yeah.
show booth, and they kind of just sat there. And now it's like, no, like you see ladies now, they're in there, they're trying the different firearms, they're talking about it. Many of them have more knowledge than I do about firearms. Like it's been cool to watch this like cultural shift. Um,
Yeah.
what like who's coming through? You said it's all walks of life, right? You got the lady who's terrified
All
of
of them.
firearms, but is like willing to
Hmm.
face her fears, to the person who's just like, no, I'm tired. Like I want to be able to
Yeah.
defend myself. Who's coming through? Like,
Yeah,
what do
exactly.
you
All
see?
of them. I'm seeing, like you're saying, both sides of that. And also, because women are the leading demographic of the growing industry of like firearms, becoming firearm owners. We are seeing so many ladies are like, "Hey, I just took my CPL class last week, and I really want to take the next step to be a responsible and educated gun owner." So they're just coming in to further their experience and get that support that they need. And a lot of them are coming with a group of friends. We had a one lady, it was her birthday, and she brought a group of 10 ladies with her. That was like her birthday party. They brought the energy. It was really great. So sometimes it's just for them to just kind of show like girl power and have that space where they can act super silly, goofy, and have fun at the range. And we also saw a lot of different age groups. We saw everybody from 65 years older and all the way down to 14 years old. So it really is for all walks of life, all ladies that are very interested in learning more and how they can then take this on. And hopefully we inspire them to, come back to the range. They just experienced having these interactions with 30 plus certified instructors and realizing that they're at a range that supports this. showing the unity that this range is here for women. And then they see 30 plus instructors that all agree that gun rights are women's rights. So they had that experience. And then to know that they have organizations like, Walk the Talk America and Gun Owners of America to all back them, they should now feel empowered to, hey, I'll see you at the range next weekend too, on your own time. Let's bring your best friend that couldn't make it. So I think it's super cool, and I see it growing very quickly, even here in Michigan, for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you ever had someone that just was absolutely terrified though? And like literally you could tell, because I remember like the first time I was on a range and like I couldn't help, I kept flinching, right? Like
Yeah.
like listening to how
Yeah.
loud it was, and it can be really unnerving. And it's like and it's always funny because like we have this whole thing where we talk about how many people use shooting as therapy, and it's therapeutic for them, right? To get out on the range, clear their mind, and literally just like
Hmm.
focus. And then that's counterintuitive for many people because they're like, wait, you go to this place that's loud and obnoxious and there's like hand cannons going off, but it does become that. But I could
It does.
definitely see, and you're inviting people in,
Right.
that some people might be terrified, shaking. I was shaking.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I was
So
too. Yeah, I think I have that experience, that unique experience as well, because I also, when I first went to the range, I had already spent all this time on social media watching people go to the range, and I was like, oh, I was a little bit desensitized to it. I'm like, oh, I can do that for sure. And then my husband took me to the range and I shot for the first time, and it was an overwhelming experience for myself. And I actually was shaking and was crying, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And luckily I had a good um person take me, like my husband taking me to the range and saying like, no, you got this, giving me a hug. So then I know that for myself what that might feel like for somebody else coming in. So yes, we do have ladies that come in that are very nervous and just like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here, I don't even know why I showed up, but I'm here. So and then we like, okay, we give them a hug and say like, you are welcome here, like you're gonna do fine. A lot of times I have to remind them like, you're going to be in very good hands. We have 30 certified instructors that are here just for you. You're going to have that one-on-one time. And then when they realize, okay, like they have a specific instructor that will be assigned to them and they will have the one-on-one time, it's not packing 20 people into one lane. It's actually, we have a line back there outside, and you're going to have this one-on-one time with your instructors. I see a big shift in their demeanor and how they then feel about going through everything. So there's that. And I think the other thing is there's a huge for ladies, it's the AR-15s that are so scary. Like mentally, there's a mental block before they get there. They've heard so many bad things about ARs just through, the news cycle and what they have been presented before they get to the range. So already they're like, "Oh my gosh, AR-15 is a part of our day. Like, why? Why are we doing this? Like, what is that like?" And again, like we slowly talk them through it and give them the space. We have like the dummy handguns that are both handguns and ARs they can touch and kind of do like dry fire practice a little bit first, talk them through it, and then the instructors are so amazing and work with them one on one. So then they realize ARs are not even as bad as handguns half the time. Like sometimes those are way easier to shoot, and literally everybody walks out laughing, having a good time. Even some of them that, if they're initially scared or after the very first shot they have those jitters or are overwhelmed, we give them a hug and we encourage them back up, and nobody's walked away completely quitting, throwing in the towel. And I think that says a lot about, what it truly is and everything.
Katie, I had 2.5 questions for you.
Yeah.
Rewinding a little bit back, I want to know how you got introduced to Walk the Talk America and like what resources you found the most valuable, and then connecting to where we are now. Is that what you find that other people that you're talking to find valuable as well, or is it something else?
So yeah, like you said, backing it up to the beginning. So I had just taken on the role of the Empowered 2A Michigan coordinator 2 years ago. And just shortly after that, about a year and a half ago, my husband's best friend lost his battle to suicide. It was very random. For us, it wasn't random for him. He had been going through a lot and it affected us tremendously. My husband, like I was telling you, he's a 14-year Army veteran. And so he himself deals with a lot of PTSD. And when his friend had taken his life like that, I was overwhelmed and shocked, and I didn't know how could I have just taken on this role for Gun Owners of America for this no compromise stance on firearms, and then have somebody like my husband who is so dear to me and his best friend, and see like what exactly happened there, and know how am I going to still be a part of the 2A community. I have no idea. I had to figure it out right away, and also just check on my husband because firearms, like, are so important. And it is one of those things that we've kind of joked about like previously of, you can't talk about your mental health because they're going to take your guns away. And, every veteran is an automatic red flag, right? So those are things that are underlying in my husband's mind, the back of his mind. Oops. Sorry, I just lost you real quick. Those are underlying in the back of his mind. And so that's where I was. I was constantly staring at my husband, just checking on him, like, are you okay? I don't know. I don't know how to talk about this. So I had gotten onto social media. I was looking at, mental health and firearms, And somehow I stumbled upon Walk the Talk America. And I was a little bit weary at first. I wasn't sure if there was still a chance, like, you guys could be like a no compromise and talk about mental health. And the more I learned, I quickly learned that yes, you guys are amazing and somehow have brought the two worlds together and made like the perfect combination. And you truly did bridge that gap between the two. And it made everything make sense for me and how I could continue on. And I immediately like went onto your website, and you guys have really, really good resources on your website for training people on how to talk about this or how to understand the 2A community better. And then you have more training on how to understand the mental health side of it better. And it was a year and a half ago, so I don't know exactly what I watched on your websites, but I watched them all. And I was like, I want to be certified. I want to know how to talk about this because I knew that I was about to walk into spaces where it was going to matter. And I also knew that I myself had, a husband with PTSD, and for my own family, it was so important that I understood this and continued to keep the conversation open. And it really has given us the permission to do that. So every time after that, I saw that you could have those cards that you could take, and then you could put on a therapist on the back of it. I thought those were amazing. So I printed those off, and my first event that I had with Empowered 2A, it was March. 2 years ago, it was in March, and I set that at everybody's table. And I said, we're going to talk about this. So when I did my intro, I always start out with, hey, I am Katie Gardner and I'm a part of Empowered 2A. But first, I would love to share with you what Walk the Talk is, Walk the Talk America. And I said, right now you have this at your table. And I think this is so important. I tell them what you're all about. And then I just give them that permission. That's an open conversation for the rest of the day. I do that at all of my events. Every time I walk into a CPL class to talk about Empowered 2A, I talk about Walk the Talk America. And now hopefully people just know, hey, that lady, she likes to talk about mental health and firearms. So it's taken like a full year and a half of me doing that, but now people really do walk up to me. And for example, I was just at an event over the summer, and it was one of my volunteers. I don't see my volunteers very often in between my events, but I did see him over the summer, and he said, hey, I really like that bracelet. They all have one of these bracelets. And he said, I wore it every single day. It was so important to me, and it finally broke, and I was so upset. So one of his buddies, which was also a volunteer, had an extra one. He said, now I have another one of these, and it's just so important. And I don't know why it's so important to him, but I love that it is. And I love that he has that resource to him and knows that he can now talk about it to all of his students because he teaches hundreds of students throughout the year. So for whatever reason, I love that that is so important to him. And then also this year at my event, I I started it off with my safety briefing in the morning, and I had a whole bag of these walk the talk bracelets, and I told them again, I get real weird for a minute. I'm like, you guys, you have to know how much I love you and how important it is to talk about mental health, and there's this amazing organization, and I talk about you guys, and right away that gives them permission for the rest of the day to have conversations. And in doing so, this past event on September 14th, one of my volunteers walked up to me and said, "Hey Katie, you know why I'm wearing this event or this bracelet here today?" And I said, "No, tell me, why is it so?" And she's like, I think this is a really important conversation for us, and I'm so thankful that you opened it up for us. Just 3 days ago, my best friend's daughter committed suicide, and things like that. It's like, it's very overwhelming. It's emotional for me to, and I feel very privileged that people will share those types of stories with me. I've had it multiple times, but that was one that just, I sat down with her for a minute and I said, I am so sorry, you know, and I am glad that we did give her that permission to share that. And she's like, I'm glad that I'm going to wear this every day now, and I want to talk more about it. I want to keep having the conversation because something's really wrong. And it's so important that we're able to not only have these awesome range days, but also create and make effective change going forward. So that's kind of been my experience with it. It's been really therapeutic for me, and going through, what I experienced with my husband and his best friend. It's been therapeutic for him because he wears the bracelet every day, and it gives him the okay to, like, I like to talk about it with his buddies. So it's just great, and I think it's important. So we keep doing the work.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate that. It's funny. I can totally relate because, like, when I first started the organization, I remember the very first time I talked about Walk the Talk America publicly was at a event in Colorado, and it was a Maj event, Maj from Black Guns Matter, and
Yeah.
I didn't realize I'd be speaking at this event, but apparently the mental health person didn't show up, and Rob Pincus and Maj like decided that they're going to throw me in
You.
there, and yeah, I wasn't ready either. And I was looking at the crowd, and I remember thinking, I don't know if they're going to understand what I'm saying. And we didn't even have a website at the time. Like, so, but it was wild. I knew we needed it. I knew we needed it because as soon as I was done speaking, like, people were coming up to me and they were literally unloading on me. And at the time, I wasn't even equipped for that. Like, I'm not a mental health guy. Like, I mean, I'm dangerous, right? I've been around it long enough, and having relationships with like the Jake Wiskershins of the world, I'm way more knowledgeable about it than I was. But people were up there telling me these stories, and literally, like, some people were tearing up and crying. Some people just wanted to, like, I didn't know what to say. I was just like, can I give you a hug? Like, you hug them.
Yeah.
But that was the moment I was like, man, like, we've done it to ourselves. Like, we didn't talk about it for so long that it's almost hit that critical level where it's boiling and the engine's going to explode. And we need this sort of outlet. And, like, to your point, what you had said earlier, I feel like the only people that were letting us talk about it are the ones that had the compromise in there, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's the mental health organizations that are like, they want to give us that opportunity, and they love that we'll express ourselves, but at the same time, they'll turn around and say something completely anti-gun or something that just doesn't stand on our belief system. And that's really why it's important, I think, like you have pointed out numerous times, that we have an opportunity to be able to express those things amongst people that are like, absolutely no compromise. Red flag laws, screw them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
We got to keep this fight going. So I really, really appreciate your perspective on that. And I'm just so thankful that the organization spoke to someone like you and your husband, and,
Mm-hmm.
And your friend, this is why we do what we do. Your friend did not die for nothing, right? Like
Yeah.
we take those tragedies, and it's like I feel like the souls are with us. Like, I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
you're familiar with the Bill Strominger story, but Bill was my one of my best friends who was the president of my family's company, and
Mm.
he took his life in 2009. It's what forced me to move into the president role of my company. But every day that I hear someone like yourself talking about being out there and spreading the word, I look to Bill and say, like, you didn't go for nothing, man. Like, we really did.
Yeah.
We made a run at this. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
uh, we're changing culture. Like that's
for
what we're
sure.
doing,
Yeah,
and saving lives.
absolutely. I agree. And I think it really is saving lives because this is so important to me because I was like, well, how do you not know that my husband's not going to be the next guy? Like, how do you just lean into it and like talk about it instead of not talking about it? And it just is so like you're saying, it's so important. And his best friend didn't die for nothing. We've now talked to hundreds of people about mental health and in the gun community, and all of our veteran friends, all of our police officer friends, like we are with these people every single day. And it is so great to be able to have that open circular conversation all the time. It's it's a real blessing to be able to do that, and very therapeutic for us to do that, so that we know that at least at the end of the day you knew that I love you and there is a place for you to go for sure, you know. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I know we're a little up against it. I want to know, what do you got going on? Any future events or any future plans right now? I know you're out there fighting the good fight every day, right? For our
yes.
Second Amendment rights. But is there anything you want to plug or talk about the GOA and whatever it is you
Sure.
feel you want to talk about?
Well, I will just say a little bit clear of a mission of what Empowered 2A is. Our goal is to educate, train, and give women a voice for their Second Amendment rights. And we invite all ladies from all walks of life to join us where you are in your journey. And it is so fun for us to meet them and encourage them on the political aspect and also in their journey to go to the range. So we love having that community with them, and we invite them to join us. You can follow us at empowered2a underscore 2a on Instagram. That is where most of our content is shared for more than one. Like, I'm just the Michigan Empowered 2A coordinator, but we have coordinators in multiple states. So by following our main page, you're going to see all the events happening from all over the country, which is really great. Antonia is the director, and she is doing amazing work across the country. The next thing we're focusing on is our National Women's Range Day that's coming up in March. So again, if you follow us on Facebook, you'll be able to stay tuned for the launch of that event. It's going to be really great. It is in, like I said, I think I said it's in March. And then my events next year, we do one big event every year to reach the Michigan ladies. And so you can follow me on Katie underscore 2A on Instagram, and I'll be sharing the launch of that. So I love the work that I do. I love talking to these ladies, and I will be fighting for you in Lansing here for your 2A rights for sure.
That's awesome. So, one last question before we get out of here. How do you tend to your mental health?
Me, it is having these tough conversations and sharing things that are important to me with others, and then also holding the space for them to share with me. I feel like my cup is filled every time I initiate that conversation, and I listen, and then I also share. And it's something that has really helped me a lot is to share. And then I also, of course, my Lord and Savior, we go to church, and it is so important for me to have a good relationship um, with the church and with prayer and with the God. So I would say those two things: faith, and then open conversations with as many people as you can.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, that's about going to do it for this episode of the WTTA podcast. I want to thank you, Katie, for coming on, and thank you for all the amazing work that you do, and thank you for spreading the word. Man. It's like we can't get enough. We're at this 6 years, and we still have people in the 2A community that are like, I've never even heard of you guys. You know what I mean? This is really cool.
Yeah.
So I know. Kevin, I got to give you your flowers. You've done a great job of making us look like this massive organization that has different departments and things like that. The professionalism has definitely been there, but we're still small, and we're all volunteers, just like you, Katie. Like, we're out there like fighting for your rights and trying to bring awareness to the gun culture and change the culture. So we appreciate everybody who's listening. All of our sponsors that make this possible, the Rugers, the NASGWs, the Davidsons, the Lipsies. We really, really, really appreciate your support. And until next time, people, we'll see you soon. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll be back with another podcast tomorrow. We got about 24 hours, Kevin, and we're back on it. So thank you.
We actually have one coming up this afternoon, and one tomorrow. Oh my God,
that's right. See, this is a Humpty Dumpty thing I'm telling you about. I would have completely forgot about that. I will see you in about 3-4 hours, Kevin.
But yeah, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll check you out in 3 hours officially. Around there, we might get started late, as it's not a Walk the Talk podcast without some technical glitches.
Thanks for having me, Mike.